Hey everyone, good morning. My name is Denise Brown. Welcome to the Caregiving Conference. Today we're going to focus on courage. And so we have a series of presentations where we focus on a different viewpoint on courage. Thank you all so much for being here. For those of you joining us live, feel free to share in the chat room, post an introduction, tell us what you hope to gain around courage, and vote in our poll. Just quickly, a little background about me. I went to University of Illinois and graduated in 1985, so you can all guess what age I am, with a degree in English. And I worked as a writer in trade magazines for about 5 years, and then decided I wanted to do something that mattered. And I started working with family caregivers, and I lived out east at that time. And so I managed a respite care program that provided services to those who care for a family member. And that changed my career. I launched a business to support family caregivers, and the first product I launched was a newsletter called Caregiving, and the first issue came out in January of 1995. So that began my work really as an entrepreneur in the caregiving space. And so I'm going to share a little bit about the courage I had. I hope it was courageous in letting go as I really redefined what my work looks like in our space. Okay, so I want to let you know that I also started a website, caregiving.com, in 1996. And at that time, I'd been publishing the newsletter for about a year and a half. And there were, I would say, a handful of us in the space of caregiving that were focused really on family caregivers. So it was a small space, we all knew each other. So the space now is so different because there's so many that focus in on supporting family caregivers. It's really great. And because I was one of the first to start in the space, I thought about how much I have to hold on to what I had created. So I held on to publishing a newsletter for 10 years until I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do this anymore. It is a drain on my resources. And as I was managing this 24/7 community, it had been a question I asked regularly: how much longer can I hold on to this? And as a solo entrepreneur, I managed a 24/7 community, which meant I managed the technology, the content, the social media when social media was out there and became readily available. I managed everything about the community. When the website crashed, I would Google, how do I fix my website? That's how I taught myself how to fix my website. So I taught myself the technology, and it really became this immense project that I didn't realize I was creating until I was up in the middle of the night trying to bring the website back up. So the question was, how long can I hold on to this? Because I was early into this space, it felt like, oh, just keep holding on, just keep holding on, just hold on. It'll get better, it'll get better. So this idea of holding on, I think, really becomes a fear of what will happen when we let go. So who will we be when we let go? How will we be when we let go? What will we be when we let go? And it's this fear that so much of who we are is tied to one concept, one identity, one business, one relationship. And we have a hard time seeing beyond that. So what I realized is the more I hold on, the more I stay who I am. But letting go allowed me to change who I can be. So I just wanted to share a couple highlights of what it was like to run this community. So it was actually launched in the corner of my parents' bedroom. So I lived with my parents at the time. I had just come out of a divorce, so I had a significant change that way. And so I was living with my parents. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to start a website. And I managed it then for 24 years until I sold it in March of 2020 to Ohio's Hospice. And so I'm no longer affiliated with the website in any way, but I wanted to tell you a little bit about what I did when I had it. So I really focused in on family caregivers are the expert, and we really need to have the voice of family caregivers prominent in anything I created. So columns in my newsletter were written by family caregivers. Blog posts on caregiving.com were written by family caregivers. And I was one of the first to offer online support groups, and it actually was because a visitor to the website in the fall of 1996 sent me an email. It was Jenny. She cared for her grandmother, and she said, I want to connect to others. And so I figured out a way to keep family caregivers connected through technology. And then as more technology became available, I started to interview family caregivers. I actually started a radio show in 1999. And then I was one of the first to actually start podcasting in 2008. And my guests were family caregivers because I really wanted their voice to be featured. And then as I started thinking about how do we elevate the voice of family caregivers, it became apparent to me that we needed to do a National Caregiving Conference. And that was presenters were former family caregivers, and you had to have a personal caregiving experience to present. What became so obvious to me about managing this really amazing community was that it became this caregiving lab. So whenever I had an idea, I could throw it out there and ask for feedback. So when I decided to stage the experience of caregiving in 1997, I was able to post the first iteration on the website and ask people, what do you think? And so their feedback just helped me continue to refine and revise and tweak the concept, which I continue to do. I just tweaked it for hopefully the last time this year. I continue to tweak it. I told myself on Sunday, don't tweak it anymore. This is good for this year. So next year I'll tweak it again. And then when I thought, family caregivers amass this amazing knowledge base during their personal caregiving experience, why can't they start a business as like a life coach? So I was able to get feedback on an idea for a training program, which became our certified caregiving consultant. And then another concept I developed, which is this idea that compassion fatigue is really an umbrella term. We have to get specific about what we're weary of. And many of you have been joining me for monthly webinars where I talk about how do we recover, how do we heal from trying fatigue, change fatigue, decision fatigue, bad luck fatigue. So I really tested that out first on the community to see what they said. Okay, and then one of the other things that I really wanted to do was elevate family caregivers within the spaces, the healthcare space, the family space, all spaces. And so I started doing award programs. And so I launched an award program in 1995. And it still is out there. I'm not affiliated with anymore, but it's just great to see how many award programs are out there now for family caregivers, really honoring what it is that they create and do. One of the first, I would say, successes that I had that made me think, okay, I'm on to something, was when USA Today listed my website as a hotspot in 1997. And so they used to do these hotspots. Now you think of a hotspot as a bad thing, but it was a good thing 24 years ago, because they would look at websites that had unusual content or really provided a different perspective or really tailored to a different type of community. And then something else we did in 2010 was we really looked at the term care recipient, which we were using rather than loved one, because sometimes we care for a family member who isn't a loved one. And we wanted to be respectful of all the relationships in a caregiving experience. And someone said to me, you know what, I feel funny calling my mom care recipient. So we had a contest. People submitted ideas for a replacement term. And then we voted on our favorite. And Carrie became the term that we began using, and it took off. And so what was interesting to me was to see the adoption of the term on social media, in books, in presentations. It just felt like that was the term that people really felt like reflected what that relationship was. And then I started chats on Twitter in 2010, and we were really lucky early on that we had chats that trended. They became trending topics on Twitter. It's amazing when I think about it. Then something else we did too was a wait buddy program. So if you had a long wait because your carrie was hospitalized, we would actually connect you to a volunteer who would send you text messages to check in and make sure that you knew that you were cared for and in our thoughts. And I raised money to help family caregivers through what we called a caregivers fund. So we sent $500 to family caregivers in need. We did chats 3 times a day. And Kathy Murray, who's here today, you can wave Kathy. She was one of our facilitators of our chat for those in an after caregiving experience. And she facilitated a weekly chat for a year and a half. Every Sunday, she was in that chat room, connecting and supporting those in an after caregiving experience. Okay, so it looks like, gosh, Denise, this is going so great, right? It does seem like that, right? You've got a website that's generating 60,000 page views per month. Look at your Twitter following. But the reality is the cost to me became too great. So the cost in terms of my finances was just overwhelming. A caregiving conference took a toll on my finances. And the toll on my body was significant as well. This is going to sound odd, but I worked so much that I literally lost use of my right arm in 2018. And then my back went out for about 6 weeks before the 3rd conference. And then the 4th conference, I just cried probably for 4 weeks before the conference started. So it was clear to me that things were not in a good place for me, that it appeared that things were going well, and it wasn't going well for me individually. And I think we can all understand a situation like that, where you feel like this is important to me, this makes a difference, it aligns with my values. So my values are really around making a meaningful difference through creating. And so this website allowed me to really create. And I really felt like I was the voice of truth in the space. So we told the truth on the website about the realities of caregiving. We did that early on. I told the truth about my caregiving experience. I started helping my father in 2004. I think, Deanne, can you mute everybody? So it looked on the surface good, but internally it was really tough for me. And you think about how many people you're going to let down if you let go, right? You feel like so many people are counting on you. How do you keep going and not let people down? And the reality was I couldn't keep going because I was letting myself down. So what happened is that I was able to release the content and the URL and retain the training programs I had developed. So the best way I think about it is I released what took up so much of my time in a way that really drained me. And I kept what keeps me in a good space. So I guess you could say I figured out the compromise. What do I let go of? What do I retain? And in this idea of letting go what really drained me, I was able to open up and really think about what's the new way we support family caregivers. It became an opportunity to have space in my head and my heart to think about what do we do that's different, that's supportive. And I really believe that what family caregivers need now is relief. We are bombarded by caregiving. And I will also say there is so many ways you can connect with other family caregivers now. So when I started, it was very difficult to connect with others in a caregiving experience. And so I felt so great about being this matchmaker, really creating a community where you could connect with someone in a similar situation. That's easy to do today. And in many ways, what we need is a break from that because we can be overwhelmed by it. So we need relief from our own personal caregiving experiences, the media, social media, our families sometimes. So how do we create this relief? And so that's really what my business focuses on. It's what I focus on in terms of the training programs, the content of the training programs. What's the relief? So I wanted to let you know that we can all let go. And I'd love for you to share in the chat room, what is it that you feel like, what are you holding on to right now? What's a fear that keeps you holding on? And I just want to go back to what's the fear? You know, who will I be? How will I be? What will I be? And what's interesting is people would say to me when I would talk out loud, I don't know how much longer I can do this. They would say, but what will you do without it? And I found it very interesting that people outside me had really attached my identity to this. And I thought, gosh, I think I would be okay. I think I could figure something out. I think I'm pretty creative. In 2018, I had a business coach and I had said, I think it's time. And he said, don't let go, don't let go. So I followed his advice and I held on for another year. But I think, you know, we know best. And I also think it's important for us to know that when you let go, you can let go of what no longer serves you, even if it serves others, without an apology or an explanation. You don't need the approval of anyone but you, because you know the cost you pay to hang on. Okay, so feel free to continue sharing in the chat room what you might be holding on to out of fear. Yeah, Chiquita, so that's so insightful what you've just shared in the chat room, this idea that you're holding on to what will you be after your mom passes away, right? Because it is entrenched in who we are, the relationship, the doing, the role. And it's insightful for you to know that there's a fear around that. And I want to let you know that we have support around life after caregiving ends. We have programs, we have events, we have courses. So know that there are resources for you that can support you as you figure this out. I also think we have to give ourselves the space to figure it out, right? We can't know until the letting go happens. And so we can give ourselves that space and time to figure it out. It's not immediate, it's not overnight, and we can still figure it out. So I want you to believe. I want you to believe in the power of your values and priorities. So I had shared my story at the beginning to let you know what I value. So I value creating a difference. I value integrity and truth. And so those really have driven what it is that I let go of and what it is that I hold on to. Tap into your values and priorities. They can help you make a decision. They can help you guide. They can guide you forward. So Christine is sharing that she let go when she used the idea of a brave mug to inspire her. Yeah, absolutely. I think what's so great is that we can be courageous and brave in the moment we make the decision to be different. And that means a different day, a different career, a different role, a different identity, how we describe who we are and what we do. So what I figured out is opportunities come from letting go. If I hold on too tight, I can't receive opportunities. I used to do a podcast with Ellen Rogan, who's a financial resource expert, and she would talk about the closed fist. We cannot receive when our fist is closed. We cannot receive when we are holding on too tight. We receive when we let go, and that's when the opportunities can come. I used to worry so much about what were the opportunities I was walking away from if I released my website. And what I learned this year is the opportunities have followed me. So I used to have partnership deals that were really important to me as a revenue stream, and those continue. I just inked a partnership deal this past fall, which was so much better than what I would have done if I had held on. So opportunities will continue to come because it's you who are creating the opportunities. And I think we also have to believe in our ability to manage change, to know that change is hard and we can find support and help around the change. We can be honest about how difficult a change is and manage it. Thank you all so much for sharing about this letting go in our chat room. I so appreciate your honesty. And I think the truth of how hard it is to let go is so important to discuss because it frees us from a judgment of ourselves. We judge ourselves for having a hard time letting go when the letting go is hard. So we can really be compassionate and gracious and gentle with ourselves. So here's what I figured out. You are your identity. It's you. It's not what you own or wear or do. Now, certainly what you own, wear, do can reflect your identity, but you can change that, right? You can change what you wear to reflect who you are today. Isn't that awesome? I talk about this in our Beginning Again course, which helps after caregiving has ended. A colleague of my parents changed his name after caregiving ended. And he goes by Ricardo now. And people call him Ricardo. Now we are talking about people in their 80s who have known him for 70 years, 60, 70 years, changing what they call him. People will adjust. People will adjust. Your stories can change. Your identity can change. Who you are can change. And as long as you embrace it, everything else will follow. And I think it's so important that we give ourselves stories around what we gain after letting go. So I think about the stories of caregiving. When I first started sharing the stories of caregiving were so compelling because it shared the vulnerability, the rawness of humanity. And it can be the same when we tell our story of letting go. You are sharing your vulnerability, you are sharing your courage, and you're sharing how you give yourself a chance to evolve and change. I looked at pictures of myself. For some reason, I don't know. Oh, it was on Facebook. It was a colleague's birthday. And so a picture appeared of he and I at the National Caregiving Conference when I was giving him an award. And I thought, oh my gosh, I looked miserable. I looked miserable. We can give ourselves a chance to look different in our life and to look at our life in a different way. It is scary and it is brave at the same time. And I think what you'll take away from today's workshop is that all of our workshops is that courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is taking a step and knowing that this is something that's really scary. So we are courageous when we take the step with fear. So thank you. Here's my contact information. And you know what? I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn. So I'll share my LinkedIn profile in the chat room. And I am going to stop sharing. I'm going to stop recording because we're going to get Lauren ready to go for our next presentation. And Lauren is going to take us from fine to phenomenal. So I'm going to ask Lauren to go ahead and start sharing. And I want to thank you guys so much for being here, for sharing your stories of courage, for being honest about what makes it so difficult to let go, and to really giving yourself the opportunity to be someone else in your life. Why not do it today, right? I think we all know because of caregiving that time is finite. Why waste time holding on to something when you can let it go so you can get something better? Okay. Thank you all so much. Okay, so Lauren's gonna join us. Lauren, can you give me 1 second? I'm just gonna stop the recording.